Okay, bon matin, good morning, good to see everyone. I would just like to highlight three things, and then I'm happy to answer your questions. First, just on the Canadian economy, we have had some good news over the summer. Inflation has now been within the Bank of Canada's target range for 7 months in a row at 2.5% in July. That was a 40-month low. The Bank of Canada has now cut interest rates 3 times in a row, and the Bank of Canada was the first G7 country to cut interest rates the first time, the first G7 country to cut them a second time, and the first G7 country to cut them a third time. Wages have been outpacing inflation for 18 months in a row, and that is really good news for Canadian families. It means they bring home more in their paychecks. And the IMF is forecasting that Canada will have the strongest GDP growth in 2025. On a eu des nouvelles économiques bonnes pendant l'été. L'inflation est dans la fourchette cible du Banque du Canada pour 7 mois. Le Banque du Canada a diminué le taux directeur déjà 3 fois. Et le Fonds monétaire international prévoit que le Canada aura la croissance économique la plus forte dans tout le G7 dans 2025. Second thing I'd like to do is highlight some really important measures for students. We know that fairness for every generation is incredibly important. We know that investing in our young people is incredibly important. And as a parent, I'm very aware that this is the back-to-school season. So I'd just like to highlight that, as we said in our budget, we are making an investment in young Canadians, in Canadian students, of $7.3 billion this year. What is that allowing us to do? The Canada Student Grant is going up again this year from $3,000 to $4,200 a year. Canada student loans, which are interest-free, are going from $210 a week to $300 a week. In total, our investment in students, in young Canadian brains, is $7.3 billion this year. Alors, je voudrais souligner l'investissement qu'on fait dans la jeune génération, qu'on fait dans nos étudiants. On fait un investissement dans les étudiants canadiens de 7,3 milliards de dollars cette année, dans les prêts, dans le financement pour nos étudiants. C'est très important. And then finally, I have an announcement. As people saw, at the cabinet retreat, the Prime Minister announced that we will be imposing tariffs on EVs from China and on steel and aluminum from China. Today I'm announcing a 30-day consultation on imports to Canada from China of batteries, battery parts, semiconductors, critical minerals and metals, and solar products. Alors, pendant le retrait du cabinet, le Premier ministre a annoncé les tarifs du côté du Canada au acier, aluminium et véhicules électriques de la Chine. Aujourd'hui, on annonce une consultation de 30 jours concernant les importations de la Chine des batteries électriques, des éléments des batteries, des minéraux critiques, des semi-conducteurs et des produits solaires. Et maintenant, je suis prête à répondre à vos questions.
Il y a une présentation sur l'économie. Est-ce que ça ne vient pas un peu discréditer votre travail pour attirer quelqu'un de l'extérieur pour venir acheter une stratégie économique? Est-ce que ça ne vient pas un peu discréditer votre autorité comme ministre des Finances?
Absolument pas. Absolument pas, non. Moi et Marc, nous sommes des amis de très longue durée, même des amis entre nos familles. Je respecte Marc énormément et je parle avec Marc souvent. Je pense que c'est vraiment une bonne chose pour la partie libérale et pour les Canadiens et Canadiennes qu'on aura des conseils du Marc concernant l'économie. Et je vais me répéter en anglais. Thank you for the question. I'm really glad to welcome Marc here to our cabinet retreat. He is a real addition to our team. Marc is a friend of a personal friend of very long standing. He's someone who I talk to often and whom I've talked to often about economic policy since becoming finance minister. I had a long conversation with him over the weekend. It's really great for our team to have Marc providing advice to the Liberal Party so that we can support Canada and Canadians. Well, in terms of Marc's policies, views, I think those are questions for Marc.
But no, my question is whether that policy is under discussion.
I think you guys know my view on hypotheticals. As I learned during the NAFTA negotiations, it's never a good idea for a politician to answer hypotheticals. Je pense que ce qu'on doit faire en ce qui concerne l'économie, c'est livrer la marchandise. On doit livrer. On était à l'écoute pendant tout l'été. Et ce qu'on a entendu, c'est que les Canadiens ont besoin du logement. On doit construire plus de logements plus vite. Les Canadiens ont besoin d'une vie abordable. On doit travailler sur ça. Et les Canadiens ont besoin d'une croissance économique qui travaille pour tout le monde. So when it comes to the economy, what we heard over the summer, all of us spent a great deal of time traveling the country, talking to people in our own communities. We heard that people have frustrations, and we listened. And what we heard is that Canadians need housing. They need us to build more homes faster. That is what we're doing. Canadians need life to be more affordable. We are working so hard on that with programs like early learning and childcare, with programs like dental care, and the fact that inflation and interest rates are coming down is extremely helpful in that regard too. And then finally, what Canadians need that we are focused on delivering is economic growth that works for everyone. Look, it is important to be candid with Canadians, and it's been a summer when Canadians have been candid with us. And I think all of us have heard Canadians have a lot of frustrations. It is so important for us to hear the concerns of Canadians, to listen to those concerns, to act on them, and to deliver. And that is what we are all absolutely focused on doing, starting with the Prime Minister. I think I've already answered that question, but I'm happy to answer. I'm happy to answer again. So let me just say about Marc, truly, Marc is a personal friend of mine of very long standing. I have been talking to Marc about the economy since long before I became a politician. And as soon as I became a minister, I continued to talk to Marc and get his advice and talk about ideas with him. He is a highly respected Canadian economic leader. It is a really good thing for our party and for Canada and Canadians that we are now able to draw even more on Marc's advice. He and I had a really good conversation over the weekend, and I'm really looking forward to continuing to work with him. C'est une question pour lui. C'est une question pour lui. Okay, I need to go to caucus, but before I do want to comment on one other thing. There is a film that is due to be screened at TIFF today in Toronto about Russian soldiers at war. Ukrainian diplomats and the Ukrainian Canadian community have expressed really grave concerns about that film, and I do want to say I share those concerns. We have to be really clear that this is a war for democracy around the world. And we as a country have to be very, very clear that there can be no moral equivalency in our understanding of this conflict. It's not right for Canadian public money to be supporting the screening and production of a film like this. Merci beaucoup.
Aren't you sick of your money working for banks instead of you? Click now to learn how Infinite Banking can change everything. With Infinite Banking, you don't have to borrow money from a bank. Instead, you can borrow money from your own system and pay yourself the interest. Your money will work for you, not for anyone else. If you are ready to learn how to revolutionize your financial life, click the link below and learn how you can become your own banker.
Buy big and save big at the Save On Foods Case Lot Sale. On now.
Je vais juste commencer avec quelques mots. I've been getting questions about an individual that entered Canada and has been arrested in charges related to an attempt to cross the border for a terrorist plot. I can confirm that Mohammed Khan is a Pakistani national who entered Canada on May, or was issued a visa in May of 2023, and was given and entered Canada on the 24th of June of the same year, so 2023. This is all that I'll be commenting on this individual. Obviously, there are criminal charges pending. As politicians, as elected officials, in order to make sure the judicial process is not compromised, although we share the goals of the prosecutors in question, it's very important that we don't comment, and actually it's dangerous to comment any further. Any defense lawyer is looking at elected officials and their comments about this case, salivating at any comment that is made that could be seen as compromising the judicial process. This is something that any responsible politician needs to be aware of. It's highly careless of Pierre Poilievre and his team to be firing their mouths off again. Any defense attorney is looking at that and just chomping at the bit to be able to make that part of their process and perhaps even compromise the case. Mr. Poilievre has experienced prosecutors on his team. They should be counseling him to shut his mouth like any responsible politician in this case.
What does it say about your own process, though? I mean, this is detecting potential terror attempts that somebody comes on into Canada. What would you say maybe more broadly about how concerned they should be about that process?
Well, first and foremost, this was a successful operation, and any security operation in a country like Canada is multifaceted, whether it's at the border or when it's in Canada and we have our police services that are acting responsibly and arresting these people as they gather the evidence. Catherine, Secretary Garland, Merrick Garland, contacted the the Minister of Public Safety to congratulate our security forces for apprehending these individuals. I think our American partner would be highly disappointed to see elected officials firing their mouths off about and speculating about this case and its outcome. We owe it to Canadians to keep them safe, to actually let the process unfold. And again, as we share the objectives and the goals of the prosecution, we actually owe it to Canadians to be quiet about the facts and not speculate and let the court court case run its course. We take any security breach and any entry into Canada very seriously, and there is a multifaceted way of being able to apprehend these individuals. Let's not be naive. A determined individual can gain access to this country, and then it's for the security services inside our country to apprehend this person if they commit a crime or if they're about to commit a crime, and that's exactly what happened. Our police forces did their jobs and arrested the individual, and we'll let the court case take its course. Mais vous présumez qu'on ne l'a pas déjà fait. Chaque individu qui vient ici, que ce soit comme étudiant, surtout que quand c'est un étudiant, doit passer la biométrie. Présumons pas qu'il y avait des carences sans avoir les preuves à l'appui. C'est clair qu'un individu ou un groupe d'individus qui ont pas nécessairement les meilleurs intérêts du Canada à cœur peuvent potentiellement entrer au sein du pays. Puis c'est ça la raison pour laquelle on a des forces policières qui font leurs recherches et puis dans ce cas-ci, qui ont très bien fait leur job en arrêtant ces individus. Oui, ça concerne évidemment l'entièreté du gouvernement, mais on a un droit très important de réserve dans le cas d'un casier judiciaire qui est toujours ouvert, puis on se doit de ne pas se prononcer sur l'évolution du cas, justement parce que les gens, si jamais il y a un succès au niveau du processus judiciaire, peuvent porter en appel si des politiciens sont prononcés par mes gardes de façon cavalière. Donc, c'est ça ce qu'on fait. Puis, ce que j'ai dit en anglais sur Pierre Poilievre, je le trouve hautement irresponsable. Il y a des gens qui ont été avocats dans leur temps au privé, qui sont des élus, qui devraient être conseillés de fermer sa gueule parce qu'ils risquent de compromettre le casier judiciaire, justement.
Vous avez annoncé plusieurs mesures sur votre qualité sur la carte d'immigration. Est-ce que ça va avoir un impact sur les
Ben, c'est à décider. On a une discussion à avoir au cabinet puis au caucus sur les niveaux d'immigration. Vous avez entendu le premier ministre très clairement se prononcer sur les taux de résidence permanente. Est-ce qu'on continue? Est-ce qu'on réduit de façon rationnelle? C'est une discussion qui est toujours ouverte, puis c'est pas quelque chose que je vais partager maintenant sur la place publique. Mais je pense que comme pays, on se doit de penser puis de réfléchir ce qui est dans l'intérêt national. Et ça passe par une discussion sur les taux d'immigration, que ce soit les résidents temporaires, dont on va parler en détail, ou la résidence permanente. Puis c'est une discussion qui est en train, c'est une discussion que j'ai eue ce matin avec notre caucus sur l'immigration qu'on va avoir aussi au caucus.
Vous avez longtemps dit que vous imaginez mal voir les immigrations à la base. Là, est-ce que je comprends que c'est en train de dire que c'est une possibilité?
C'est une possibilité, mais l'important, c'est que quand les circonstances économiques ou autres changent, on se doit, comme gouvernement responsable, de s'ajuster, puis c'est justement ce qu'on regarde présentement.
I want to ask you about a case involving temporary foreign workers, specifically in Ottawa, with a construction company. They've been found in violation of labor laws by the Ontario Ministry of Labour for wage theft. This company hires these workers from Jamaica and a whole bunch of things not being and that sort of thing. So we wanted to know, first of all, how will the federal government hold employers who exploit foreign workers to make sure that they are accountable for these kind of practices?
Yeah, I mean, Mike, we have to crack down on outright fraud. We will be continuing to do that along with our provincial counterparts. It's clear, and we saw that even though I disagreed with some of the comments made by the UN Special Rapporteur in sort of the inflammatory language he used, some of the realities that he described do happen and do exist in the temporary foreign worker space, and it's something that we owe it to ourselves to fix and to right. There is wage on the margins, there is wage depressions and wage suppression, and it's something I think we need to attack head on. Again, if employers are not abiding by the law, they need to be prosecuted to the full extent of it.
Will these workers be subject to deportation, though? Because right now they've been fired, their jobs have become unionized and given away.
There are many programs to keep them in the country, notably so that they can testify in this case. And I also have a program within my department that gives them the ability to get. Gives them the, let me finish, Rafi, that gives them the ability to be able to stay here on a longer basis. Again, under normal circumstances, as temporary foreign workers, they would have had to leave at some point, so this is not an opportunity for people to stay over and above the time that they were committed to staying. But again, if they are needed in this country for a variety of reasons, there are a number of programs that they can use, especially one that allows them to testify in the case so that the employers can be held to account. Rafi, sorry.
Just the English on immigration levels. About a year ago, your government used to say it's perhaps a little racist to even suggest that immigration levels are linked to the bad shape of the economy in Canada.
Well, I don't think we said it's racist to suggest that. I think what we said is that there is a tendency. People have been tendentious in their haste to link it entirely to immigration, and I think that still is the case. But it is also naive to ignore the fact that immigration volumes have impacted affordability. And as the economic circumstances change in this country, so does the posture of the government of Canada. Again, we can do this without calling each other bigots. We can do this in a context where we're actually having a rational discussion about the national interest of Canada and whether we need to reduce immigration levels, and if so, to what extent. Blaming everything on immigrants is exactly what it is, and I don't think it's right, because if it's not accurate and you try to solve the problem, you're not solving it by simply cutting down on immigration levels. You have to actually deal with other things, whether it's Airbnb, whether it's interest rates that weren't caused by immigration, whether it is the failure of successive governments to provide adequate housing at the provincial level or even at the federal level. Those are all issues that you cannot blame immigrants for. No one is crediting immigrants for bringing down the interest rates, but we did sort of, by the back door, some people directly start to attribute the increase in interest rates to or affordability to immigrants. So we have to have a real conversation about it. David? I didn't hear the first part, David.
About the Pakistani national.
Sure.
Can you give us information about the kind of visa that was issued to him?
He was on a student visa. Yeah, he was granted a student visa in May of 2023, and he entered at Pearson Airport June 24th of 2023 that year.
And does that spark some particular concern about how student visas are granted?
I'm not going to speculate on the various original ways that people have ill intentions towards Canada coming to this country, or whether they were developed while people were here. Again, that's speculation. But we're always concerned about how people obtain their visas, particularly if it's through fraudulent means. I've taken a number of steps throughout the summer to turn the screws a bit on that process. But again, this is a criminal case. It's ongoing, and it's careless to speculate further. Laurence? Encore une fois, Laurence. Faudrait lui poser des questions directement. Laura?
What is your message to Canadians who have reasonable concerns about the security of our immigration process?
Well, I think Canadians can be confident that our security systems and apparatuses actually worked. We are constantly looking internally at what we can do to make sure Canadians continue to be safe. But again, no one can pretend and stand honestly in front of you and say that a well-determined actor can't come to this country. And that's why we have the security apparatuses that we have in this country. And in the two cases that you mentioned, Laura, our police did their jobs and the system worked.
Okay, hey guys, I don't think you have any questions. You asked all of them to Marc Miller. So, bonjour à tous, ça me fait plaisir de vous voir. So first and foremost, I've been a lot in my writing and doing a lot of door-to-door this summer, and what I heard a lot is people are very preoccupied with affordability issues, and we know that affordability issues are linked to what's going on in the world. We know we're dealing with 3 wars and lots of tensions, particularly in Asia. And so in that sense, my job as foreign minister is to defend Canada's interests and to bring much more peace and stability to the world. And to that end, this morning I spoke with the new foreign minister of Ukraine and with the chief of staff of President Zelensky, and we spoke about the very important peace formula that Ukrainians have been working on and that we're participating in. Donc en français, Bien, ça me fait plaisir de vous voir aujourd'hui. Cet été, j'ai eu l'occasion de rencontrer plusieurs Québécois, plusieurs Canadiens, faire beaucoup de porte-à-porte. Et puis, ce qu'on entend aux portes, ce que les gens nous disent, c'est essentiellement que les gens trouvent que la vie coûte trop cher. Et donc, dans les circonstances, on sait qu'il y a beaucoup des enjeux liés au coût de la vie qui sont liés au fait qu'il y a 3 guerres présentement dans le monde, puis il y a beaucoup de tensions en Asie. Alors, mon boulot comme ministre des Affaires étrangères, c'est encore et toujours de protéger les intérêts du Canada, d'amener aussi un peu plus de paix et de stabilité dans le monde, ce qui a un impact nécessairement sur le coût des choses au pays, les coûts des services. Dans ce contexte-là, ce matin, j'ai parlé avec le nouveau ministre des Affaires étrangères de l'Ukraine et également avec le chef de cabinet du président Zelensky. Comme vous le savez, on travaille présentement avec les Ukrainiens sur une formule de paix, en anglais on dit « peace formula », pour l'Ukraine. Et donc, ça me fait plaisir de répondre à vos questions dans ces circonstances. Alors, merci. Donc, premièrement, notre politique est claire. Depuis le 8 janvier dernier, il n'y a pas de nouveaux permis qui ont été émis pour l'envoi d'armes ou de composantes d'armes en Israël. Par la suite, j'ai demandé à mon ministère de faire une révision, un examen de tout ce qui était en place au niveau des permis existants. Cet été, j'ai suspendu une trentaine de permis existants pour poser plus de questions. Fait que ça, c'est la première chose. Deuxième chose, la politique est claire. Il n'y a pas d'armes ni de composantes d'armes qui vont se retrouver canadiennes, qui vont se retrouver à Gaza. Un point, c'est tout. Peu importe comment ils vont être envoyés directement par le Canada ou de façon indirecte, c'est pas pertinent. Ce qui est clair, c'est que la politique est ferme et donc notre objectif est de faire en sorte qu'il n'y ait pas d'armes ni de composantes canadiennes d'armes envoyées à Gaza et c'est pourquoi je suis en contact avec la compagnie General Dynamics. Yes, of course. Just a second. And yes, I'll just say it in English, okay. So, first and foremost, our policy has been clear. Since January 8th, I have not accepted any form of arms export permits to be sent to Israel. And so following that, I asked my department to look into any existing permits of arms or parts of arms that could have been sent to Israel. Following that, I suspended this summer around 30 existing permits of Canadian companies, and we're asking questions to these companies. Meanwhile, as for the question regarding General Dynamics, our policy is clear. We will not have any form of arms or parts of arms be sent to Gaza, period. How they're being sent and where they're being sent is irrelevant. And so, therefore, my position is clear, the position of the government is clear, and we're in contact with General Dynamics. Absolument pas. J'ai eu des conversations avec lui hier encore. Ça fait longtemps que je connais Marc. Et puis, l'objectif est de faire en sorte qu'on ait la meilleure équipe pour gérer l'économie canadienne. Comme je vous ai dit, ce que j'ai entendu cet été, c'est que les gens sont vraiment, vraiment préoccupés avec le coût de la vie. La vie coûte trop cher. Les gens veulent que leur facture d'électricité coûte moins cher. Ils veulent s'assurer aussi que leur facture d'épicerie coûte moins cher. Puis ils veulent s'assurer aussi qu'ils aient accès à un bon emploi, puis que leur famille ait accès à un bon emploi. Donc, contente qu'ils soient là. Qu'est-ce que j'ai entendu sur mon chef? C'est quoi votre question? Aux portes? Bien, je pense que les gens, on sent qu'il y a une anxiété, on sent qu'il y a une frustration. Puis moi, c'est ça que je suis ministre des Affaires étrangères. Donc, je vois ce qui se passe au pays, puis je le vois aussi partout à travers le monde. Les gens sont préoccupés. On n'a jamais vécu autant de changements en une génération. Donc, ça crée un inconfort, ça crée une frustration. Puis, je comprends, parce que je le sais que le coût de la vie coûte trop cher. On le voit, on a juste à faire notre épicerie. Et donc, dans les circonstances, nous, là, la meilleure stratégie, c'est de faire en sorte d'être là, de rencontrer les gens où ils sont, d'être là où ils sont. Puis nous, notre but, comme gouvernement, c'est de gouverner. Fait que là, on a mis en place des programmes super importants pour réduire le coût de la vie. Faire en sorte qu'au final, là, bien, les gens vont recevoir de l'argent pour quand ils vont au dentiste, quand ils vont vouloir acheter des médicaments comme l'insuline, la contraception, quand ils vont vouloir aussi faire en sorte d'envoyer leur enfant à la garderie. Fait que c'est des façons pour nous de trouver des solutions aux problèmes qui sont très, très réels, qui sont essentiellement que la vie coûte trop cher. Yes, Mary Kay. Just a second. Yes, Mary Kay.
Alexander Magda said yesterday, you can't win in the next election with Justin Trudeau off the ticket. I mean, before you convince Canadians, don't you have to convince people inside?
Well, of course, and we're doing that.
So what's the message? What do you say to them to convince them that the polls are not what they are, or that they're so changeable?
You know, Mary Kay, what I heard this summer was Canadians don't want elections. They just want us to do the job. They just want us to govern. And that's what we're doing. We're governing. We're taking tough decisions. Why? Because times are tough. And so, wait, let me finish. I'm speaking. So, the reality is, like I said in French, is we know that cost of living is too expensive, that people are frustrated with it. So what do? We do everything to reduce the cost of things and services. So that's why we have dental care. That's why we're working on a Medicare plan. That's why we have also affordable housing. And that's also why we're really working on childcare. These are all things that the government are doing. And good news, we have new people now that will be there to help us to make sure that we have a very strong economy at the same time that the middle class is protected. Yes.
Demonstrate right now that your party can still hold seats on the island of Montreal, and if you can't do that, I don't know what message to send.
I'm convinced we will win. Sorry, David.
Sorry, Laurence asked about Marc Carney.
Yeah. Well, I said I know Marc Carney. I've known him for some time now, and we had a good conversation yesterday. I think it's good news that he's going to be there to help us with economic issues. C'est sa décision, Louis. C'est pas à moi à lui dire, là, sincèrement. Moi, je suis toujours contente quand il y a du nouveau monde qui se présente en politique. Surtout pour le Parti libéral, bien entendu. Oui.
Going off my colleague's question, I mean, you said you can win the election. Toronto, St. Paul, big piece otherwise. What if you see a landslide that's going to happen in Montreal and in Winnipeg? In order to win the majority, you need to win Toronto and Montreal.
We're working on making sure that we get the confidence of electors, voters, maybe, of course, in Manitoba, but I've been working specifically also in Montreal. Yeah. Moi, je pense que ça fait 9 ans maintenant qu'on est au gouvernement. Ça fait 9 ans que je suis ministre. J'ai vu plusieurs différents conseillers au cours des 9 dernières années venir nous aider. Donc, c'est une stratégie, c'est une approche qu'on a eue au cours des 9 dernières années qui marche. Alors, c'est de bonnes nouvelles. Merci beaucoup.
Afternoon, it's 12:15. Hello. At 1 p.m. in this very room, the co-chairs of the Secretary General's panel on critical energy transition minerals, and that's Ambassador Mkato Diseko of South Africa and Director General Dieter Jorgensen of the European Commission. We'll brief you on the panel's work. Also, we will release at 1 p.m. a statement from the Secretary General on the panel. He's, as we speak, meeting with the panel co-chairs to officially receive the report. Also, after a lot of back and forth, on Wednesday, September 18th at 11 a.m., the Secretary General of the United Nations will be in this very room to speak to you prior to the opening of the 79th high-level session of the General Assembly. Put it in your calendars. As you know, today is September 11th. 23 years ago on this day, we remember the 9/11 terrorist attacks that struck this city. Secretary General said that today his thoughts are with everyone who lost their loved ones on 9/11 and with all the people of New York City and also all of our colleagues here who also lost loved ones. In a social media post, Mr. Guterres said New York City has hosted the United Nations for decades and the place many of our colleagues call home, and so does he. On this day, the United Nations underscores its commitment to never forget the nearly 3,000 people from over 90 different countries whose lives were taken on that day, and the thousands more who were injured or sickened. Earlier this afternoon, local time in Gaza, an Israeli airstrike hit an UNRWA school being used as a shelter, the new Nuseirat school in Gaza. The site had been previously deconflicted with Israeli security forces. This is the fifth strike on the same location in the past 11 months. We're trying to confirm reports that some UNRWA staff members were killed in the attack. Meanwhile, the polio vaccination campaign in northern Gaza is continuing. The World Health Organization tells us that as of yesterday, more than 81,600 children under 10 had been vaccinated. That's according to preliminary data they are recording. This brings the total number of children reached across Gaza to nearly 528,000 as of yesterday. We'll share updated figures as soon as we get them. More than 230 teams on the ground are trying to reach all children under age of 10 with the first batch of the polio vaccination. As you'll recall, we'll need to do this again in 4 weeks. Our colleagues from the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs warn that Gaza's healthcare system remains in dire condition, with our partners reporting that half of all essential medicines are not available in the Gaza Strip. Primary health centers are facing critically low levels of insulin. Routine vaccinations to protect infants from tuberculosis, as well as diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis, are also nearly exhausted. In the West Bank, OCHA reports that the United Nations and our partners continue to support Palestinian civilians affected by the 10-day Israeli security operation in Jenin and Tulkarem, as well as adjacent refugee camps. This includes the support includes the delivery of food and water, with OCHA coordinating efforts to provide additional assistance. Over the weekend, OCHA, along with UNRWA and other humanitarian partners, began assessing the needs of Palestinians impacted by the operation. OCHA reports more than 620 people, over a third of them children, remain displaced. As of Sunday, 2,400 housing units had been damaged, with more than 100 rendered uninhabitable. In the Tulkarem and Nur Shams refugee camps, more than 2.6 kilometers of water and sewage networks were bulldozed during the operation, severely hindering access and delivery of essential services. OCHA reports more than 33,000 residents have been coping with water cuts and sewage flooding over the past 2 weeks. In the Kafr Dam, in the Jenin refugee camp, and in eastern Jenin, about 70% of the city's roads and underlying water and sewage networks were bulldozed during the operation, cutting drinking water for about 35,000 residents of those areas and creating sewage flooding problems. Also, I just want to read into the record a statement we issued late yesterday, in which the Secretary General strongly condemned the Israeli airstrikes that took place in a densely populated safe zone area designated as a safe zone by Israeli security forces in Khan Yunis, and the killing of civilians, including women and children. The use of heavy weapons in densely populated areas is unconscionable, the Secretary General said. You had that statement yesterday. A quick note on Yemen. Most of you must have seen the recent allegations made by the de facto authorities in Yemen regarding some of our agencies which are working tirelessly to address the impact of the dire humanitarian situation on the people of Yemen. We firmly reject the allegations made by the Houthis that UNICEF, UNESCO, and other humanitarian partners have been colluding to destroy Yemen's education system. Such false statements are baseless and further threaten the safety and staff and hinder our ability and our partners' ability to serve the people of Yemen. With over 4.5 million children out of school in Yemen, UNICEF calls on the Sana'a authorities to lead a constructive and collaborative approach, working together with all partners to address the pressing needs of all children. We underscore that the safety of all United Nations personnel must be respected and assured. The Secretary General is deeply concerned that 3 months have passed since the Houthis arbitrarily detained 13 UN personnel, in addition to members of civil society, national and international NGOs, as well as diplomatic missions. Additionally, 4 UN staff were detained in 2021 and 2023 and remain in detention. The Secretary General reiterates his call for the immediate and his unconditional release of all UN personnel and partners who are arbitrarily detained in Yemen. In the meantime, those detained must be treated with full respect for their human rights, and they must be able to contact their families and contact their legal representatives. A couple of travel updates for senior political officials. Rosemary DiCarlo, the Undersecretary General for Political and Peacebuilding Affairs, wrapped up her visit to Libya today with a meeting with the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Guila Saleh. They discussed the current political dynamics and the way forward. She emphasized the need for a political process to find a consensual approach to overcome the crisis affecting Libya. We'll have more detail on a note to correspondence that we will share with you that will give you an overview of her trip to Libya. Meanwhile, one of her deputies, Miroslav Yencha, Assistant Secretary General for Europe, Central Asia, and the Americas, completed a visit to Haiti today. He reiterated the United Nations' continued commitment, including through the UN political mission there, to accompany Haiti's path to restore security, democratic institutions, stability, and development. Mr. Yencha met with the President of the Transitional Presidential Council, Edouard Leblanc-Fils, also with the Prime Minister, Gary Conille, and other senior officials. He also met representatives of the Haitian National Police, the Multinational Security Support Mission, civil society, representatives of various institutions and political parties, among others. All of those he met emphasized that security remains the biggest challenge. While some successes have been activated in anti-gang operations conducted by the Haitian police with the support of the Multinational Security Support Mission in Port-au-Prince, it is imperative for the international community to urgently and substantially increase its support for the MSS as well as the Haitian National Police. This is fundamental to improve security and allow progress on the political track and in development. Mr. Yencha agreed with interlocutors on the critical importance of the expeditious appointment of the Provisional Electoral Council. The United Nations will continue to support the government in planning and executing a credible and fair electoral process. Mr. Yencha also traveled to the northern city of Cape Haitian, where the people he met there expressed concern that security operations in Port-au-Prince may lead to a spread of gang violence to other regions. They echoed calls to further strengthen the Haitian National Police and provide effective security across Haiti. Turning to West Africa, the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reports that hundreds of thousands of people in Nigeria have been impacted by flash floods after a dam collapsed in Maiduguri in the Borno state, and that's in the northeast of the country. OCHA says that immediate humanitarian needs include food, include shelter, and clean water. Protection remains a major concern, especially among unaccompanied and separated children, older people, and people living with disabilities. Unfortunately, the $927 million humanitarian response plan for Nigeria is currently 46% funded, with $422 million. Despite the funding challenges, we and our partners are mobilized in supporting the government's response. Yesterday, the United Nations helped conduct an aerial assessment of impacted areas with the support of UN Humanitarian Air Service. For its part, the World Food Programme and its partners have started to distribute food aid. And just to paint you a picture of the scale of this disaster, according to the International Organization for Migration, nearly 240,000 people have been affected after the dam burst on Monday, and that followed heavy rains and structural damage to the dam. Flooding is reportedly covering 40% of the town of Maiduguri itself, which has an estimated population of over 870,000 people. The town also hosts 2 camps for displaced people, and that the combined population of those 2 camps is 230,000 human beings. Local authorities have been reported damage to bridges, telecommunications, electricity networks. In some areas, the floods are also disrupting access to healthcare facilities, schools, and other services. In the meantime, our humanitarian colleagues tell us that evacuation of people by the government authorities continue. These flash floods are occurring against a backdrop of floods across Nigeria and other parts of the region, which have so far claimed more than 200 lives, impacted more than 800,000 people across 29 of Nigeria's states. That's what national authorities are telling us. Some of the flood-affected areas in Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe states are facing food and nutrition crisis impacting 4.8 million people, putting the lives of 230,000 children at risk of acute malnutrition. And in the Central African Republic, our peacekeeping colleagues continue to work to support an initiative launched yesterday in Bangui by the African Union as part of its Silencing the Guns initiative. Our colleagues are playing a crucial role to support efforts to combat the possession and circulation of illicit arms, particularly small arms, which threaten peace and development. Through logistical, technical, and financial support, the mission has helped national authorities to mark and register over 1,500 weapons sites since late 2023 and support the government's 2024-2028 National Action Plan against the proliferation of small arms. The second pillar of the mission's disarmament work is to support the Community Violence Reduction Program, which is active in Bangui and 13 prefectures of the country. That aims to support the sustainability of the mission's demobilization, disarmament, reintegration efforts, targeting civilians, particularly young people prone to violence, by offering alternatives such as vocational training and income-generating activities. Since its launch in 2015, the program has directly benefited more than 38,000 people. Furthermore, a total of 600 weapons of war, 15,000 traditional weapons, and 33,000 rounds of ammunition have been collected. And just for the record, you saw that yesterday afternoon the Security Council met to discuss threats to international peace and security. They were briefed by Joyce Masuya, our acting emergency relief coordinator. She noted that regrettably in 2.5 years since the escalation of the war in Ukraine, the situation only continues to worsen, adding that the death toll is mounting and human suffering continues at intolerable levels. Ms. Masuya said, "We are deeply concerned by the recent expansion of fighting in new areas on both sides of the Ukraine-Russia border." Those texts were shared with you. Quick announcement from the UN Refugee Agency, which today says it needs $21.4 million through the end of the year to urgently scale up critical response and prevention efforts for refugee countries impacted by Mpoc's emergency. The appeal aims to support 9.9 forcibly displaced people and host communities in 35 countries across Africa. Money today. Quiz. Landlocked country is home to the Grand Mosque of Djenné, which is the largest man-made clay structure in the world. Sorry, don't... Okay, you're wrong. And you're right. There you go. The Grand Mosque of Djenné is the largest man-made clay structure in the world, dates back to 1907. The town of Djenné was designated as UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1988. We thank Bamako. Mali, yes, Mali. Yeah. You're never right, so you get a question.
Thanks, Steph. Going back to this IDF strike on the UNRWA shelter in Gaza, you said you're looking into staff casualties, but
Yes.
what about shelter residents?
Our colleagues on the ground are trying to evaluate the situation.
And how many staff were at the shelter? Do you know?
We're trying to get all that for you.
And has the IDF given you any explanation?
No, ma'am.
Have you asked for one?
We're in touch with them.
And then just on Yemen, the detentions that you reminded us about, are they related to these allegations against the UN agencies?
No, these were allegations made by the Houthis, which we feel threaten the staff that continues to work. Right. So they're not no new detentions that we know of, but to make these sorts of public statements threaten and the staff, and especially our national staff that continue to work in Yemen.
But do you have a reason for the detentions of the earlier detentions?
No, we still okay. Nothing more than you've seen. Edie.
Thanks, Steph. According to hospital authorities, at least 34 people were killed in the UN strike, in the Israeli airstrike on the UN school and on homes today. Does the Secretary General condemn these strikes, and is the UN going to do any kind of a protest?
As I said, we deconflict all of our schools, which are now shelters. We condemn all airstrikes that target civilians and those that also target UN facilities. And we are, as I said, our colleagues are in touch with Israeli authorities. Deji, Gabriel, then Benny.
Well, I can give you an explanation from IDF about why the...
No, you can ask me a question. I don't need... Yeah.
They claimed there is a command center in that school by Hamas. It's a deconflicted zone. What's the possibility for Hamas to infiltrate a deconflicted zone in the UNRWA school to set up a commanding center?
Let me just say, we of course do not... we do whatever... Our policy is clear, right? UN premises should never be targeted, nor should UN premises be used by any groups or any force from which to launch military activities. UN premises need to be protected. UN premises need to be respected, and that is by all parties to any conflict.
It's not been respected, obviously, by IDF, but is that the case that Hamas was not there?
I cannot answer that question. Okay, what I'm telling you is that the use of UN facilities, whether from which to launch attacks, the targeting of UN facilities is against international humanitarian law. Okay, Gabriel, then Benny, then Benno, then Abdelhamid.
Thank you, Steph. You said regarding this UNRWA facility that was hit by the Israeli military, it's the 5th time in the last 7 months. The previous 4 times, has Israel gotten back to the UN with evidence on that there was Hamas fighters there?
I'm not aware of that.
And you have asked for it?
Yeah.
And can you just clarify, in this facility, there are UNRWA employees working, and what are they doing? I think there's a perception out there that this is an empty shelter.
No, I mean, within those places that used to be schools that are being used as shelters, UNRWA staff continue to try to provide basic services, food and water, some psychosocial services. I mean, I think we talked yesterday about schools reopening, or on Monday. And in those shelters, they try to help children by providing games and playtime. And so there are staff providing all sorts of services.
And do you have an idea of when we'll know if any UNRWA staff members
we should know later today.
And last follow-up on that same topic is when Israel targets a UN facility, do they give you any sort of warning so you can get your staff out in advance?
I'm not aware that any warning was given, but you should check with UNRWA to make sure.
Thank you.
Benny.
Two questions unrelated. One to this, related to this. Several countries not named Israel have cited infiltration of Hamas into UNRWA in removing funding from UNRWA. Do you have any comment on the Swiss legislature yesterday removing funds from UNRWA?
The Secretary General continues to believe that UNRWA provides essential, critical services to the people it's mandated to serve and should continue to be supported by all member states. UNRWA has been extremely proactive in dealing with suspected cases of people who were involved or accused of being involved in terror activities. You know that we kind of rang the alarm bell on that. Your second
and
question,
yet you can't tell if there were any Hamas members in this specific
I'll
case.
stand by what I just said a few minutes ago.
My second question regarding, since we were talking about the budget and Bamako's fantastic contribution, as far as I remember, there was, this is totally unrelated to anything. As far as I remember...
It's got to be related to something, Benny.
As far as
everything's
as far as I remember,
connected.
There was a rehabilitation of this building for over $2 billion a few years back.
The Capital Master Plan?
What? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know. The escalators seem to not work.
Look, you're a poor imitation of James Bay's, Benny. No.
I have no idea what.
No, I don't. I think the escalator, I've noticed, has been in a state of efforts are being made to repair the escalator for quite some time. I very much hope it's repaired because I'm lazy and I like to use it to go from the ground floor to the first floor. But I will check with our colleagues to see how quickly it will be repaired.
There was a lot of money involved in
I don't think the escalators were really redone. If you look, that part wasn't... I'll check if I'm not sure the escalators were refurbished.
Maybe a couple more $1 million would help in that effort?
Not to refer to... anything I may have seen yesterday, but I do detect a little bit of sarcasm in your question.
Me?
Yeah. Benno and then Abdelhamid.
It's a spicy briefing today. Wow. Summit of the Future was once labeled by the Secretary General as a once-in-a-generation opportunity to, I paraphrase, reform the United Nations or the enhanced cooperation between countries. I just received the speakers list for the Summit of the Future. From the P5 countries, none intends to send either head of state or head of government to this event. What does it say about the gravity of the event and, frankly, about the readiness of the P5 to reform the United Nations?
Well, I think I will let you analyze the willingness of the P5 to reform the Security Council. I think what matters is the work that has been put in these last months and especially these last weeks and days on the outcome document, which will be approved and adopted before the speakers come forward. So we're really focusing on the tremendous work that has been done by the co-facilitators, Germany and Namibia, if I'm not mistaken, and all of member states to get us the best possible outcome document.
And how would you characterize this state of the negotiations right now? I mean, like you might have seen the document.
I'd hoped you would ask that question to Guy Ryder, but I didn't. I think maybe the word I would use is intense. Madame, and then... Oh, sorry, Abdelhamid, sorry.
Thank you.
I'm being
Thank
thrown
you,
off.
Stefan. I have a few questions, too. So we're talking about two incidents. The attack on Al-Mawasi in Khan Yunis, which left 40 Palestinians dead, and the attack on the school, which has left many civilians killed, including a small child. So I haven't heard the number of people killed in both incidents.
Well, first of all, the number of this particular case, we're looking at the numbers of what we can confirm, which is our own staff. As you know, we rely on the local Ministry of Health for the casualties. I'm sure we will get the numbers that we can. I think we were very clear, extremely clear in our condemnation of what happened in Mawasi yesterday.
My second question about what you have read about the results of the Israeli attack on Jenin and Tul Karim and all these refugee camps and other towns in northern Palestine. Do they have any other name other than collective punishment? Why you don't say that, sir?
Listen, there are a lot of words that we don't use. You are welcome to criticize us for the words that we use or we don't use. Your next question.
My last. Khalida Jarrar is a member of the Palestinian Legislative Council. She's a very graceful woman. She was arrested several times. Now she has been for months in a solitary confinement. Her health is deteriorating by the hour. And if nothing is said about her, you might hear her death in the next few days.
We hope that everyone that is being detained is given the service and being treated in accordance with international standards. Madame.
Steph, on that school, again, on the UNRWA school, can you tell us what the capacity was for the shelter?
No, we were getting the information just as I was coming here, so we'll send you out an email with all the details that we have.
And one more. You said it was the fifth time this particular school shelter was hit. Is the UN considering perhaps just closing the shelters because the schools are repeatedly hit and families are being killed?
Everything is repeatedly hit.
But these seem to be less safe than some of the other places.
I think that's all. That's all relative. We still need places where we can service people. We do our best to protect them, but as we've said, there's no place safe in Gaza. Idia, sorry, then Ibtisam, and then Deji.
Steph, going back to Yemen, you said 4.5 million children are out of school.
Right.
How many of those children are in Houthi-controlled areas?
That I need to get that breakdown.
Thank you.
Okay. Ibtisam.
So my question is, we hear every day about massacres and killing of Palestinians, attacks on your health aid, convoys, cars, schools, etc. And this all happens with American and European weapons. And if the weapon delivery will stop, or if the Americans will stop this war could stop. Did the Secretary General consider talking to the Americans or putting public pressure on them to stop the weapon delivery to the Israelis, to stop this war?
Look, we want this conflict to stop, and the best way to stop it is to initially, for the parties to find the courage to reach a ceasefire and get us back on track to a two-state solution, which may sound a little too optimistic to speak about at this point, but for the Secretary General remains the only solution forward.
Yeah, but that's not my question. In order to get to the two-state solution, I don't know. But the question is very simple. In order, you constantly condemn killing, etc. So the question is what to do now, immediately, to stop this war. And why isn't he putting more public pressure? Why isn't he putting more public pressure on these countries that are delivering weapons in order to stop this war?
I think the Secretary General has been very vocal in what he feels needs to be done to stop this conflict. And I think on the issue of weapons, I think you asked the question yesterday in a different manner, and I answered it. Deji.
Yes, Summit of the Future. Can you confirm that VP Kamala Harris would participate in Summit of the Future?
No, I don't. Ask Ben. Benno's got the speakers list.
She will not.
Okay.
Oh, sadly. Okay, so I was just thought to ask whether the Secretary General has the intention to meet with the VP.
As we said, the Secretary General will meet with any head of delegation, anybody who comes into the UN and requests a meeting. We expect the U.S. delegation to be led by the President, Mr. Biden.
So last night there is a spectacular TV political show on U.S. TV. Has the Secretary General watched that show?
The Secretary General is well aware of what transpired during 98 or 100 minutes yesterday on television in the United States and around the world.
But after that show, Taylor Swift made her endorsement. Will the Secretary General endorse what Taylor Swift's endorsement?
I never saw I would say that, but let's go to Benny. Benny, sorry. Sorry for being the pinata. I apologize for treating you like a pinata today.
Welcome to my world.
Yeah.
So, to follow up on Ibtisam's question, there is a proposed resolution in the General Assembly that would impose complete arms embargo on Israel, global arms embargo on Israel. Does the Secretary General, that I know is not part of the General Assembly and all that, does the Secretary General have an opinion on such an idea?
What the Secretary General would say is that this conflict doesn't need any more weapons. Okay.
Wait. That's different than
no, but
complete
that's my
arms
answer.
embargo.
You get to choose the answer. You get to choose the question. I get to choose the answer. Stefano.
Yes, it's a follow-up on the debate of last night. He said that from what I understand, the Secretary General is well aware, probably watched it. There were three main topics in international affairs. There was Gaza, Ukraine, and also climate change. Does the Secretary General is satisfied with the way the two candidates handled those topics?
Nice try, Stefano. But the Secretary General focuses on what people who are elected or who are in power do. He doesn't focus on statements during election campaigns.
Are you saying that Taylor Swift is not elected?
Okay. Nice. Thank you. Thank you all. See you later. Good afternoon. My guest today, and your guest today, will be Corinne Fleischer, the Regional Director for the World Food Program for the Middle East, North Africa, and Eastern Europe. She will be here in person very shortly to talk about her travels to Ukraine, where she was very recently. Also, just on Ukraine this afternoon, at 3 p.m., the Security Council will convene for a briefing on the maintenance of peace and security. Acting Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Joyce Masuya, will brief the Council on the humanitarian situation in Ukraine. This morning, the Secretary General spoke at the closing of the 78th session of the General Assembly. He said, "We have witnessed a year of continued poverty, inequality, and injustice, a year of division, violence, conflict, and a year that was the hottest on record again." But he added, the session also closes at a time of growing hope and inspiration that we can achieve if we work as one. He thanked the outgoing President of the General Assembly, Dennis Francis, for his work over the past session. This afternoon at 3 p.m., the Secretary General will address the opening session of the 79th session of the General Assembly under its new president, Philomene Yang of Cameroon. The Secretary General is expected to discuss the ways in which the UN can be a place to find multilateral solutions grounded in dialogue, diplomacy, and the UN Charter. Also earlier this morning, the Secretary General laid a wreath at the memorial of our second Secretary General, Dag Hammarskjöld. He said that the ideals that drove Dag Hammarskjöld are ours to pursue: peace, justice, and shared humanity, adding that the Summit of the Future later this month is an opportunity to embrace the spirit of Dag Hammarskjöld's work and reform our multilateral institutions so they are fit to pursue peace in a changing world. A number of you have asked me for a reaction to what happened at in Gaza at al-Mawasi camp, and I can tell you that the Secretary General is deeply alarmed by the continued loss of life in Gaza. He strongly condemns today's Israeli airstrike in an Israeli designated zone for displaced persons in Khan Yunis. The use of heavy weapons in densely populated areas is unconscionable. Palestinians had moved to this area in Khan Yunis in search for shelter, in search of safety, after being repeatedly instructed to do so by the Israeli authorities themselves. As the Secretary General has repeatedly said, there is no safe place in Gaza. He repeats yet again his call for an immediate ceasefire and for the immediate and unconditional of all Israeli hostages and others nationalities still being held in Gaza. And earlier today, Tor Venesland, our special coordinator for the Middle East peace process, in his own statement strongly condemned the attack. He said that international humanitarian law, including the principles of distinction, proportionality, and precaution in attack must be upheld at all times. He also emphasized that civilians must never be used as human shields. Further to the attack on al-Mawasi, the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs led an assessment team to the area today to identify the most urgent needs of the population and to mobilize efforts to meet those needs. UNICEF, the Food and Agriculture Organizations, and other partners took part in the mission, which distributed shelter materials and non-food items, repaired water infrastructure, and provided protection support. OCHA warns that aid workers in Gaza continue to face daily threats to their safety and ongoing obstruction to their efforts to reach Palestinians in need of life-saving assistance. Yesterday's incident involving a UN convoy stopped by Israeli forces is the latest example of the unacceptable dangers and impediment that humanitarian personnel in Gaza are experiencing. The convoy was carrying 12 staff members on their way to support the polio vaccination campaign in northern Gaza. Its movements were fully coordinated with Israeli forces and all details provided ahead of time. When the team was stopped at the al-Rashid checkpoint, they were informed that Israeli forces wanted to hold 2 UN staff members in the convoy for questioning. The situation escalated very quickly, with soldiers pointing their weapons directly towards our personnel in the convoy. The UN vehicles were encircled by Israeli forces and shots were fired. The convoy was then approached by IDF tanks and a bulldozer, which proceeded to ram the UN vehicles from the front and from the back, compacting the convoy with the UN staff inside. One bulldozer dropped debris on the first vehicle while Israeli soldiers threatened staff, making it impossible for them to safely exit the vehicles. The convoy remained at gunpoint as senior UN officials engaged with Israeli authorities in an effort to de-escalate the situation. The 2 staff members were interrogated by Israeli forces and then released back to us. After 7.5 hours at the checkpoint, the convoy returned to base after being unable to complete its humanitarian mission, but all personnel came back. This incident and the conduct of Israeli forces on the ground put the lives of our staff in danger. It is critical that Israeli forces take measures to protect humanitarian staff.
Je vais vous donner des mots d'ouverture et puis je suis prêt pour vos questions. Donc, premièrement, je dois dire qu'on s'amuse beaucoup. Ici à Montréal, c'est incroyable. On a eu un événement hier soir et merci pour votre présence pour appuyer notre candidat Craig Sauvé. On a vraiment aimé ça. On a fait la porte-à-porte, tous les députés ensemble. On a pris le métro ensemble aussi. On a vraiment aimé ça. Aujourd'hui, je veux parler du fait qu'on croit, les néo-démocrates, on croit profondément que tout le monde, n'importe où vous vivez, vous devez avoir le droit de trouver du logement abordable. Ça, c'est quelque chose de fondamental dans la vie des gens. Mais malheureusement, ce n'est pas le cas. Maintenant, les gens vivent en peur qu'ils vont perdre leur appartement et puis il n'y a aucune option. Il n'y a aucune alternative. Les gens vivent en peur qu'ils vont être rénovés par les géants de l'immobilier. Et ça, c'est un grand problème. Et c'est clair que Justin Trudeau a laissé ces géants d'exploiter les gens, de continuer d'augmenter les loyers, d'exploiter leurs locataires. Ça, c'est quelque chose qu'on doit arrêter. Et c'est clair que Pierre Poilievre et les conservateurs ne vont pas régler ça. Le conseil principal pour Pierre Poilievre est un lobbyiste pour les géants de l'immobilier. Donc, il va prendre les conseils de ces géants au lieu d'aider les gens. Et si on regarde les bilans de ces deux partis, de Pierre Poilievre et Justin Trudeau, ils ont laissé plus d'1 million de logements abordables être vendus aux riches entreprises. Et ça a augmenté les prix et on a perdu ces logements abordables. Donc, ce que je veux annoncer aujourd'hui, mon équipe et moi, on va présenter un projet de loi dans cette session pour faire deux choses. On va bannir les géants de l'immobilier d'acheter du logement abordable. Le problème, c'est, si on regarde dans les années 90, il y a zéro logement abordable où le propriétaire était un géant de l'immobilier. Maintenant, c'est plus que 20%. Donc, on va bannir les géants de l'immobilier d'acheter du logement abordable. Et deuxièmement, on va arrêter l'argent public aux géants de l'immobilier qui exploitent les gens, qui augmentent les prix, qui rénovent les gens. On va dire non à ces entreprises. Vous ne pouvez pas recevoir l'argent public si vous exploitez les locataires. Ça, c'est ce qu'on va proposer, ça, c'est ce qu'on va mettre en place, un projet de loi qu'on va déposer ensemble comme une équipe cette session. I'm going to do that in English, then I look forward to your questions. So first off, I got to say, we're having a really good time here in Montreal. Alexandre's been a great host. This is his city, as he likes to remind us. And we've had an awesome time spending time with Craig Sauvé at his campaign office. Thanks to folks that were there to see the energy in the campaign office. We went door to door, and we brought the MPs on a subway ride, which folks really enjoyed to get to the office. And so we're having a good time here. Today we're talking about something very important. We believe, fundamentally, that no matter where you live in this country, you should be able to find a place that you can afford. You should be able to find a place to call home. But that, sadly, is not the case. More and more people are living in constant fear that they will lose their apartment and there's nowhere for them to go. They live in constant fear that the corporate landlord is going to just jack up their rent and they're not going to be able to afford it. Or if they lose their apartment, there's just no other options. This has to change. And under Justin Trudeau and the Liberals, they've let these corporate landlords rip off Canadians. They've let them continue to exploit their tenants. And this is wrong. And we know that Pierre Poilievre is not going to fix this problem. His chief strategist is a lobbyist for these real estate development companies. So he's going to take advice from them. He's not going to take them on. He's not going to stop them. And if you look at their combined track record, the Liberals and Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives allowed the sale. They sold off effectively 1 million affordable homes. These are deeply affordable. They both combined, sold them off to rich developers, to rich corporate landlords. And that has meant we've lost 1 million affordable places to live. So this is our plan. In this upcoming session, as a team, we are going to present a bill that's going to do two things. One, it's going to ban corporate landlords from buying affordable homes. We see this happening again and again. Back in the 90s, 0 of the apartments that you saw were owned by big corporate landlords. Now, over 20% are owned by large corporate landlords, and they continue to jack up the rents. That's one thing we're going to do. Second thing is we are going to make sure that no corporate landlord receives even a cent of public money if they abuse or exploit their tenants, if they jack up rents unfairly, if they rent evict their tenants, if they do anything that exploits or undermines the rights of tenants, they're not going to get a single cent of public money. And what we're talking about is right now, corporate landlords get preferential tax treatment, they get direct financial subsidies, they even get CMHC-backed loans that allow them to buy more properties. We're not going to let them have a single cent of public money if they rip off their tenants. We're going to protect renters.
Si vous avez perdu confiance aux libéraux de Justin Trudeau, pourquoi ne pas écouter Pierre Poilievre puis voter non-confiance en Chambre? Pourquoi pas faire ça? Vous avez déjà perdu confiance.
Je vais jamais écouter Pierre Poilievre et les conservateurs. Ce sont des gens qui veulent démolir notre système de santé. Ils veulent couper les pensions. Ils veulent attaquer les travailleurs. Et leur bilan montre ça. Je ne vais jamais écouter les conseils de quelqu'un qui veut faire mal aux gens. On veut ramener l'espoir pour les gens. On ne va jamais écouter Pierre Poilievre et les conservateurs qui veut faire mal aux gens.
Encore une autre belle journée. Je viens de terminer ma tournée à travers le Canada, ma tournée de gros bon sens où j'ai partagé mon plan de couper taxes et impôts, bâtir des logements, réparer le budget et stopper les crimes. Une tournée qui m'a amené au Québec à plusieurs reprises pour voir la belle nation québécoise et surtout ses travailleurs extraordinaires. Des travailleurs en foresterie, en aluminium, des fermiers, des pêcheurs et d'autres mondes qui travaillent fort pour bâtir notre pays. Et j'ai remarqué l'incroyable énergie et courage de nos travailleurs qui ont toujours pu vivre la promesse du Canada, la promesse que le Canada fait à tous les jeunes, que n'importe qui de n'importe où peut faire n'importe quoi. C'est une promesse que le Canada m'a fait quand j'étais né d'une mère monoparentale qui avait juste 16 ans. Une promesse que mes parents m'ont fait après, à 2 enseignants, que si je travaillais fort, je pouvais avoir une bonne vie. Et c'était le cas pour tout le monde. Avant le gouvernement, coalition, Bloc libéral. Mais après 9 ans du Bloc libéral, tout coûte plus cher. Après, les taxes et les déficits inflationnistes ont gonflé le coût de la vie et doublé la dette nationale. Le travail n'est plus payant. Vous le gagnez, le Bloc libéral en prend. Le coût de logement a doublé et a augmenté plus rapidement que dans tous les autres pays du G7, beaucoup plus cher ici au Canada qu'aux États-Unis. La criminalité et les drogues sont présents dans nos rues qui étaient auparavant sécuritaires. Et que fait le Bloc face au gouvernement le plus centralisateur et coûteux dans l'histoire du pays? Le Bloc a voté pour garder au pouvoir le gouvernement le plus centralisateur et coûteux dans notre histoire 188 fois. Le Bloc a voté pour des crédits budgétaires totalisant 500 milliards de dollars. 500 milliards de dollars, c'est un demi-billion. J'avais à apprendre le mot billion parce que je n'étais pas au courant si le mot trillion existait en français. Mais il faut apprendre d'autres mots pour pouvoir exprimer la grandeur de la dette tout en respectant la loi sur les langues officielles au Canada. Donc, billion, c'est 1000 milliards de dollars. Notre dette a doublé à cause du Bloc libéral. Et c'est bizarre qu'une partie soi-disant souverainiste vote toujours pour enlever l'argent des Québécois et le centraliser ici à Ottawa. Le Bloc a voté pour la taxe carbone, le hausse dans le deuxième taxe carbone qui, oui, s'applique au Québec de 17 sous le litre. Le Bloc a voté pour augmenter les taxes sur les gains en capital, sur les fermiers québécois, des entrepreneurs québécois, des médecins québécois. Et maintenant, le Bloc menace à voter encore pour garder Justin Trudeau au pouvoir. Au moment où on a la chance finalement de battre Trudeau et causer des élections afin d'amener un vrai changement basé sur le gros bon sens. Que dit Yves-François Blanchette qui considère encore garder Justin Trudeau au pouvoir? J'ai une annonce aujourd'hui. J'ai une annonce aujourd'hui que les conservateurs de gros bon sens vont mettre de l'avant une motion de non-confiance à l'occasion le plus vite que possible pour déclencher des élections sur les taxes, les impôts et les politiques centralisatrices de Justin Trudeau. Donc, j'ai une question pour le Bloc. Est-ce que le Bloc va voter pour les Québécois en déclenchant cette élection et en faisant une défaite de Justin Trudeau? Ou est-ce que le Bloc va voter pour garder au pouvoir le gouvernement le plus centralisateur et coûteux dans notre histoire? C'est ça la décision pour le Bloc. Ils doivent le prendre avant les élections partielles. Parce que le Bloc ne veut pas que les gens sachent dans les partielles qu'ils gardent Justin Trudeau au pouvoir. Donc, je fais un défi à Yves-François Blanchette. Assez, c'est assez. Annoncez aujourd'hui. Allez-vous, oui ou non, voter pour une motion de non-confiance ou allez-vous garder au pouvoir Justin Trudeau? C'est ça votre décision. Moi, ma décision est faite. Je veux des élections pour élire un gouvernement de gros bon sens qui va couper taxes et impôts, bâtir des logements, réparer le budget et stopper les crimes. Nous allons couper les taxes et impôts pour rendre la vie plus abordable et le travail plus payant. Nous avons réparé le budget en gelant les dépenses, en éliminant la bureaucratie, le gaspillage et des contrats aux consultants. Ça va nous permettre de réduire le déficit, les taxes, les impôts et l'inflation. Nous allons inciter les municipalités d'accélérer les permis de construction, libérer le terrain et couper les taxes sur le développement pour bâtir des logements abordables pour les Québécois et tous les Canadiens. Nous allons stopper les crimes en mettant les vrais criminels en prison, en sécurisant nos frontières pour empêcher les drogues et les armes illégaux. Et nous allons permettre les chasseurs de garder leur propriété. C'est ça le gros bon sens qui est nécessaire pour rebâtir le Canada qu'on aime. Un Canada où n'importe qui peut faire n'importe quoi et qui peut accomplir une bonne vie pour tout le monde. Merci beaucoup. Je vais juste faire mes commentaires en anglais et après ça, je serai très heureux de répondre à vos questions. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, everyone. Despite my strangely timed cold, I had a great summer traveling across the country, seeing the extraordinary people, the farmers and fishermen, the factory workers and forestry workers, the hardworking people, the soldiers who protect our country and keep it glorious and free. They reminded me of the Canadian promise, the promise that anyone from anywhere could do anything, that hard work would get you a powerful paycheck that bought affordable food, gas, and homes in safe neighborhoods. A country where it didn't matter where you came from. It mattered where you were going. It didn't matter who you knew. It mattered what you could do. That's the country that I inherited. I was born of humble means and raised by school teachers. The country my wife came to as a refugee from Venezuela, 6 people in a 2-bedroom basement apartment in Montreal, but look at the success they've enjoyed. That was the Canadian promise. But after 9 years of the NDP Liberals, that promise is broken. Everything costs more because of money printing deficits that destroy our money and our dollar, and high taxes that punish work and destroy paychecks. A carbon tax that's now 17 cents a litre, which the NDP Liberals have voted and budgeted to increase to 61 cents a litre. That tax increase would grind our economy to a halt. The trucks and trains that deliver the goods to our supermarkets would stop rolling. Their drivers would be unemployed. The factories that ship their goods in those trucks and trains would shut down. It would be like a nuclear winter for our economy if the Trudeau NDP Liberal agenda of hiking the carbon tax to 61 cents a litre were to go ahead. Now, hard work doesn't pay. You earn it, the NDP Liberals take it from you. Housing costs have doubled. Faster rising housing prices in Canada than in any other G7 country. Now 25 to 45% more expensive. We have middle-class workers living in cars and tents. Tent cities have now become common in every single centre across this country where they never existed before in once pristine and beautiful community parks. We now have people living in tents, either because they can't afford homes or because the radical NDP Liberal agenda of flooding our communities with taxpayer-funded and decriminalized hard drugs has addicted our people, leaving them lying on pavement, their contorted bodies, half lifeless. Maybe they are among the 44,000 people who have died of overdoses in the last 9 years of this chaotic policy. Our borders have lost all their security. 99% of shipping containers go uninspected. That's where all the drugs and guns come in, leading to a 120% increase in gun violence under Justin Trudeau's radical agenda of banning hunting rifles while allowing criminals to run free. Catch and release criminal justice has made us all lose our security. Now, Jagmeet Singh, who supported all these policies, in fact pushed for them to happen, says that Justin Trudeau is radioactive. And right before the by-elections, Singh suddenly had a change of heart, or so he said, publishing a